Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Saraswatim Vyasam.
Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudire.
Tato Jayamudire.
Nashtaprayasu Abhadresu.
Nashtaprayesu Abhadresu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Reading from chapter 15 from Bhagavad Gita, titled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. And today we have verse number 90. Yo mam evam asammudho.
Yo mam evam sammudho.
Janati purushottamam.
Janati purushottamam.
Tasarva vidvajati mam.
Tasarva vidbhajati mam.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Yo mam evam asammudho.
Yo mam evam sammudho.
Janati purushottamam.
Janati purushottamam.
Sasarva vidvajanti mam.
Sarva vidbhajati mam.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Sarva bhavena bharata.
Word by word meaning. Ya, anyone who.
Yeah, anyone
who.
Mam, me.
Mam, me.
Evam, thus.
Evam thus.
Asammudha, without a doubt.
Asammudha, without a doubt.
Janati, knows.
Janati, knows.
Purusha Uttamam, the Supreme Personality of God.
Purushottamam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Sa, he.
Sir, he.
Sarvavit, the knower of everything.
Sarvit, the knower of everything.
Bhajanti, it does devotional
Bhajati,
Bhajati,
devotional service.
Mam, unto me.
Mam, unto me.
Sarva Bhavena, in all respects.
Sarva Bhavena, in all respects.
Bharata, O son of Bharata.
Bharata, O son of Bharata.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Without whoever knows me,
Whoever knows me
as the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme
Personality of Godhead,
without doubting,
without doubting,
is the knower of everything.
He is the knower of everything.
He therefore engages himself
He therefore engages himself
in full devotional service to me.
in full
devotional service to me.
O son of Bharata.
O
son of Bharat.
Any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to read this?
There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. Now, in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth. But the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step, and still there are so many Satborn commentators on Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entity to be one and the same.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else would like to read this?
Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Hare Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hawks is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from the Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of Vedas.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else would like to read the last page?
The word Bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word Bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. He has already come to the point because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary process of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, doesn't come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Let's all chant together. Om Agyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Durmritam
Chakshurvatamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah
Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam
Chaitanya
Bhutale
Ena Bhutale
Swayam Rupa
Rupa
Kadam
Kadamaya
Dadati Swapadantikam
Swapadantikam
Vandeham Shri Guru Sri
Sri Guru
Yugalakamalam Shri Guru
Sri Guru
Vaishnavanscha
Vaishnavanscha
Shri Rupam
Irupam
Sagrajatam
Sagrajatam
Sarvanamtam
Sadhanvitam Tam Sajivam
Sadvaitam
Advaitam Savadutam
Krishna
Saitam
Chaitanya
Krishna
Devam
Chaitanya Devam
Sri
Sri
Radha
Radha
Krishna
Krishna
Pada
Padadan
Lalita
Sahagan
Anvitancha
He Krishna
He
Karuna
Krishna
Karuna
Karuna
Sindhu
Sindhu
Bandhu
Dinabandhu
Jagatpate
Jagatpate Gopeshwar
Gopesha Gopika
Visha
Kanta
Gopika
Radha
Kanta
Kanta Namaste
Namostute
Kanchana
Bhakta
Gopika
Kanchana
Kanchan Gaurangi
Vrindavaneshwari
Gaurangi Radhe
Vrindavanusute
Vrindavaneshwari
Devi Pranamami
Vrindavanusute
Isharanusute Devi Pranamami
Panchakalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhuvaivacha Patitanam
Vitanam
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavabhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Namo Namo
Jai Krishna
Jai Shri
Chaitanya
Krishna
Prabhu
Chaitanya
Nityananda
Nityananda
Prabhu
Shri
Nityananda
Advaita
Nityananda
Gadadhar
Gadadhar
Srivas
Radha
Radha
Srivastava
Gaur Bhakta Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
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 Krishna,
Krishna
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 Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare
Rama
Rama
Hare
Rama
Rama
Rama Hare
Rama
Hare
Rama Hare Hare.
Santya Brahmatma, So thank you so much for joining this Sangha. And last time we talked about 15.15, and my apologies for some technical issue in the beginning. Somehow Zoom got uninstalled and I had to reinstall, and the web angle was not giving me the view I was trying to, so apologies for that. So today we're discussing a verse which is towards the end of chapter 15. Chapter 15 is referred as Purushottam Yoga, how to get to the Supreme Person, how to unite with the Supreme Person. And in that process, towards the end of chapter 15, Krishna is explaining Yomam Evam Asam Mudho. Mudho is someone who is foolish. And Sammudho means one who is complete foolish. And if you put a in the beginning, it becomes totally opposite. That means a person who is not without any doubt, as Krishna is saying, Janati Purushottamam. That means a person with full knowledge can only understand the Supreme Person. And he goes on to say, Sasarvavit Vajantima, Sarvabhavena Bharata. That means if you know Krishna, then you know everything. So the question becomes, if you know Krishna, do you know computer science? The question becomes, if you know Krishna, Do you become knowledgeable about mechanical engineering or cloud technologies? So this is a common question everybody asks. Is knowing Krishna knowing everything? And here Krishna is saying, whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. So here Krishna is giving very profound thing, but we have to understand it in the right context as to why he is saying he knows everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service. And he is referring to Arjuna as, O son of Bharata. So just before this verse, there are three varieties of people who are discussed. Okay, so one type of person who are Kshara, or the fallible class, who are essentially the living entities like you and me, who are in contact with the material world, and we are called Jiva Bhuta. So we are essentially prone to errors, and we have, we change, our body changes, our cells change. So we as matter change. We go through the process, the 6 phases of change, such as, melting, sublimation, evaporation, freezing, condensation, deposition. Whenever we go through the winter and summer, there is some aspect of the change in matter happening in our body. And the 6 changes of matter are referred as melting, sublimation, evaporation, freezing, condensation, and deposition. So we are Shara, we are fallible. But there are another class of people who are Akshara, who are one with the Supreme, who are essentially in the Supreme abode of the Lord. But they're one with the Supreme. That doesn't mean they are Supreme. They're one with the Supreme means they are alike Supreme. They are, when somebody says they are one with the Supreme, that doesn't mean that they do not have any individuality. They have individuality. So if you see, when people refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Nirakar, as someone who doesn't have a form, then they basically say Lord doesn't have any personality. Lord not having a personality is unthinkable. We all have personalities of our own. We like something, we dislike something, we like to drive, or we like to eat. We have a personality of our own. For somebody to come and tell us the Lord doesn't have personality, which Mayavada says is utter nonsense, is just not true. Lord has a personality. Even the Akshara, the infallible class, one who is one with the Supreme, they also have a personality. And then we also spoke about the third kind of person. There is not many, there's just one, and he is the super soul, and he is the master of all living beings. So essentially, we're talking about 3 classes of people. One who is Jiva Bhuta, like all of us, Akshara, when the person becomes one with the Supreme and the Supreme abode of the Lord, and the Supreme Personality of God. So there are 3 kinds of people. We're 3 classes of people in that sense. So here Krishna is saying, Yoma evam asam mudha janati purushottama. So that Krishna is saying that of these 3 classes, the fallible class like us, Shara, who knows the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting, that means asam mudha, without doubting, that means with clarity, he knows everything. And then Krishna goes on to say, Sasarva vidvajanti mam sarva bhavena bharata. He, in recognizing the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what he does, he serves. He essentially engages in devotional service. Bhajanti, bhajati. So this verse is very clear in our mind. But question becomes, when you know Krishna, do you know everything? And that is something we have to discuss a little bit. So because we have got this body, and it's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, Nirdeham Adyam Sulabham Sudurlabham. That means we have got this human body. We are better than the 4-legged animals or aquatics, where we get favorable results by our access, by our hand, by our knowledge, through our invention of computers, We have now gone to space, and is effortlessly obtained through impossible, though it is impossible to obtain even with great endeavor. So we are very preferred. I mean, we are in this situation where we have a sudurlava lifestyle, and we can gain access to so many things effortlessly, and we can understand the Supreme, and nobody else can. So of the 8.4 million species, the human being set of species are the people who can truly understand. And that is where, so if the philosophical position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not established by us, then it's a total disservice for the life we have gathered in this world. So Lord has given us this life because we had desire to enjoy without him. We had done some prarabdha karma, by virtue of which we have revolted against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of that revolt, Lord has given us free will. And because of that free will, we have taken the life of a human being. But in spite of giving us that revolting life, he has given us the Sudurlava life. That means the best of life. So in this best of life, if we do not know who we are, where we came from, and what is the relationship between them, then we have now known nothing actually. So if the person doesn't know the self, he doesn't know anything. And if the person knows the self and where he has come from and what is the relationship, then he knows everything. Because a person who doesn't know the self cannot know anything. So in that context, Krishna is saying, if you have understood yourself, you have understood everything. Because even if you know cloud, even if you know mechanical engineering, but you don't know who you are, then there is no point of anything, because without understanding who we are, we can't learn to learn things, because that will be full of fallacy in our mind. So if you take this verse slightly ahead, Srila Prabhupada is using some wonderful analogies, but this process of knowing the Supreme is through the Vedic knowledge of Shruti, where you're learning by oral reception. So we have to receive Vedic knowledge from authorities like Krishna and his representative. And that is where Srila Prabhupada is using the word hog. Don't hear like a hog. Why Srila Prabhupada is using the word hear like a hog? Because hogs are essentially the personalities who can eat anything. They can eat good, bad, ugly. So they do not have the audacity or the knowledge or the sudurlabha to discriminate between the food particles. So that can eat anything. So Prabhupada is saying, simply to hear like hogs is not sufficient. That means whenever we are trying to hear something, hear about our creation, our supreme lokas, and so many activities around it. If we start hearing from everywhere, from the TV, from this channel, that channel, then we are simply hearing like hogs. And that is where we need to have the power to distinguish between right and wrong. So we have to hear from the source, and the source is the one which has come from the supreme source, which is the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. So if something is not coming from the supreme source and is being contaminated around its traversal path, it is not going to be perfect. And that is why you'll see people are hearing Krishna Katha from all kind of channels, but still they question, who is God? They question, this Baba is God. They accept this Baba is God. They accept Lord Shiva is God. Ganesh is God. And that is where there is a tremendous amount of disservice. Lord Shiva is a Param Vaishnava. He is Vaishnavanam Yatha Sambhu. But after hearing so many channels, so many TV programs, so many speakers who look good, who are on the TV, they haven't truly understood the essence. And that is where, when we're taking oral reception for Shruti, we have to make sure that we do not hear like hogs. And we have seen many people in this world who have taken to hearing spiritual um, wisdom, but at the end of the day, they do not know who the Supreme Personality of God is, because they take their mind wander and they tend to speculate because they have gathered bookish knowledge through academics. But this bookish knowledge through academics is very short lived. Even our life is short lived. The person who has come up with the science, it lives for 10 years, 20 years. The IC engine was developed. Now the internal combustion engine is off the hook. Now people are resorting to electrical cars where you just charge and there is no internal combustion engine. It's running through batteries. So the IC engine, which was a big invention for 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, maybe 200 years, it may last some time, but they're saying the IC engine cars will be off the road by 2035 or 2045. So such big inventions who have taken place are going down the drains. So that means we are living in a very short lived, and with the technology, every good thing which is coming up is becoming short lived. Even our relationships are becoming short lived. What to talk about this big inventions? So we have to resort to the source, and that is where a person engaged in Krishna consciousness has understood all Vedic knowledge, because there is no spiritual activity, because he is doing it. Like, the last example we gave is, if I'm saying I'm having headache, and we just have people sitting around and just hearing that the person has headache, then it is not good enough. But if a person goes on to get a balm or something, then you're truly experiencing that communication, and you're doing some activity. So if you're already doing it, you have truly understood it. Then there is no point of having this big knowledge and science and physics to really prove something. We were just trying to link things and trying to showcase that has value, and trying to correlate the fact that you have the knowledge to correlate. But at the end of the day, serving with love is so profound that these equations and this way of linking things together doesn't have that much value if you think about. So speculation is a sheer waste of time. And if we, after all these years of Krishna consciousness, of the chanting of the holy name, if we haven't, then there is no point in getting this knowledge, which is really not getting us to the point of understanding who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. So knowing Krishna means knowing everything. And when Vyasadeva wrote all the Vedas, Narad Muni condemned him, because by writing Vedas, you're basically telling them how to enjoy life. If you do this, you get this benefit, so you enjoy life. And because of that, Vyasadeva felt remorse, and then he started writing Srimad Bhagavatam, where the pastimes of the Lord is exhibited beautifully. And reading that, people will become very close to the Supreme, and they will understand transcendental science. And that really is the culmination of the understanding that if you have understood the Supreme, and you're doing that direct, loving devotional service, then you have truly understood everything. Because everything else being temporary, this is the only thing which is going to be with you for all the time. So if you want to hear and understand about the four sons, you can go to each son. Like you can go to one son whose name is Rick, there's some whose name is Yajur, Sama, Atharva, and try to gather. Otherwise, you go to the root, and the root is the father who gave birth to these four sons. And if you ask about the four sons, you can understand about the four sons. So whenever we think in this world, there is a lot of, when you chatter, when you talk louder, and you have 4 or 5 people talking the same thing, even if they're not telling the truth, it becomes a habit for us to have that mechanical reception and believing it, because our mind is very flickering. So once a Brahmin was going, and he had a goat with him, and he was just going and walking along the route. The three thieves, they had a ploy. So first thief came and he said, "Oh, Brahmanji, you are taking this nice dog. Where are you taking?" Then the Brahman said, "No, it's not a dog, it's a goat." Then, "No, you see, it's a dog, he's barking." And that put doubt. And then the thief left. And after half a kilometer, the second thief appeared, and he said, "Wow, Brahmanji, how nice this dog is. And he's going to cause a lot of problem, because you have to maintain him." And then the Brahman felt, why is the second person coming and telling me that it's a dog when I'm basically carrying a goat from one place to another? And that put the doubt, but he said, "No, it's not a goat. It's not a dog, it's a goat." And then after a mile, the third thief came and asked the Brahman that you're carrying this nice dog. Why you're carrying this nice dog? Nice dog. This dog is going to bark at you and is going to create mayhem. And then the Brahman by then was so much brainwashed that he left the goat who the thieves were pretending. So you see, as more and more mechanical reception is getting into the mind, your thought process is changing. But at the same time, if the truth is mechanically received by you again and again and again, it will actually benefit you. So even if you think you have not understood who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is, but if you still take to chanting, for example, and mechanically chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Exactly like, trying to use that negative example of the thieves trying to confuse the Brahman that the goat is a dog. If you endure and ascertain that you're going to chant again and again, and you're going to call out the names of the Lord in a very mechanical way, even if your intent is mechanical, a time will come when your love for the name or Harinam becomes so much that this process, we are in this journey, because this life, what we are now serving, is not our destination actually. It's just a stop, or it's just a station in a long journey. And we think this is the end, and we think this is the only life we got, and we have to enjoy to the fullest without having that deep understanding as to who we are and who is the Supreme and what should be the relationship between them. Without that, we indulge in so many things. But at the end of the day, if we have not understood, and this is just journey, and this is just a stop station, and we have a long way to go. And if we have done that, as Krishna says, we do devotional service and we have understood everything. And that is why, if a person does not know the self, then he doesn't know anything. Essentially, when you think about that, if the purpose of studying and doing systematic Bhagavad Gita is essentially to make sure we understand that we are not the body and we are the soul, and there is a super soul, Paramatma, who is watching us all the time. And more we arouse that sense of relationship between soul and super soul, then we have met the purpose of life, which is Sudurlabha. And if we have not taken the audacity to get our lives back on track in a right way, we have destroyed the life, which that Srimad Bhagavatam sloka will explain. But this life we have got, devotees, is very rare, and we shouldn't let go, and we should take it seriously, and here devote our time to the nectarian process of bhakti. And by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you've understood everything. And as the beautiful pastime of Lord Ganesh goes, Kartik, he goes all around the world so many times, but Ganeshji, he goes around his parents who were for him the universe. And so if you have understood the basics of the essence of the life, you have pretty much understood the whole thing. You really do not have to eat the entire bucket of rice to recognize that the rice is good. If you just take the essence, one rice, and you test it to be good, then you are assured that all the rice has been cooked nicely. So we can go on and on, but would like to open up for some conversation. Beautiful words to discuss that just by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, you have the ability to understand everything. So with that, I'd like to end here. Any question, comments, reflections, corrections? Let's talk about it. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, how is everything? You have any questions? You're in India now, I hear.
Yes, sir. Everything okay, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. So it must be early in the morning. Is it very cold there, wherever you are?
Not so much.
Okay.
Tolerable.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
So thank you for joining, and all the time you've been very regular in this discussions. So thank you, Prabhu. Any questions, comments from anybody? Mataji's, Prabhuji's? So if chanting is not becoming very apparent or becoming very obvious, we should take a moment to not divert our attention, because if you think about it, our mind is always wandering, and mind is looking for ways to sort of unshackle from the position, from the inherent position of being part and parcel of the Supreme. So because of that free will, there is a lot of problem and challenges. So if the mind is wandering, try to get it back, try to remember that we're part and parcel of the Supreme, and we have to make an effort to reinvigorate that relationship which is dwindling. And in order to do that, always associate, hear the right thing, don't hear from. So if you have, the classic example given is, if you have milk coming in, and in the meantime, if the milk is eaten or touched by a serpent, then it's going to be poisonous. So always try to receive the milk from the source, which Srila Prabhupada is talking so beautifully, and let's not eat like a hog, eat anything, and then after eating anything, we become very confused, because this side is coming with, okay, this Lord is the head, this Baba is the head, and this Devi, this goddess is the chief, and all that. And then our mind becomes, we think by protecting that thought process, we are not disappointing anybody. But if we do that, they themselves will be very disturbed, because for them, as it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavad and Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam, and if they recognize that we are treating them as the Supreme, they themselves will not like it. So always go by the source and not have conflicting. And it's not easy, I agree, because we all have grown up in a family where everybody is valued, but we should look at the constitutional position of all of the gods, demigods, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why Srila Prabhupada very focusedly, after a long thought, have coined that word Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is supreme, and there is no one supremer than him. Personality, he's a person. He's not as if he's not a person. If we have a personality, how can the God not have a personality? Can't think of that. We all have a personality. Our kids have a personality. If you, they have certain likings, they have certain dislikings in the programs they watch or the food they like. So everybody has a personality of their own. And how can, and that's where Mayavadi says gods don't have a personality. He doesn't have a akar, nirakar. He doesn't have akar. He doesn't have a form. It's unthinkable, So, and the Prabhupada says Godhead. He's the head of all the gods and lords, Supreme Personality of God. Beautiful. So, with that, any comments, any thoughts? You want to share something? We have some devotees who are missing because they are either traveling or they're not well or whatever the case may be. But if you have any question or comments, we'd like to hear your thoughts as to how this works.
Yeah, so I was hearing one of the lectures from the Radheshyam Prabhuji. So somebody asked, so I was not getting that mood when I chant. I doesn't like. Sometimes he likes, sometimes he doesn't like. So Prabhuji was saying that it's like a jaundice. We are actually in jaundice, okay, jaundice mood, okay. So just generally, jaundice people, they don't like the sugarcane juice, right? So basically, that is the cure, okay. So jaundice people, the only cure is that you have to drink sugarcane juice, okay. So she was telling that whether you like or don't like, okay, you have to chant, okay. So that is the only medicine, right, which will kind of cure like this material, right? Otherwise, it's I really like that the way he was.
Absolutely. He's amazing, and he was in our temple probably 6 months back or 8 months back.
Like the kind of examples he is giving, right? Really very, very good. Okay. Whenever he speaks with examples. Okay. And those examples are really very, very good. Okay. So
Thank you for sharing. Yes, the Prabhuji is saying that I think medicines don't, that's why we gulp, right? If you chew it, you can't really take it. And when you were diseased, as in jaundice, during the disease, you can't breathe properly. With COVID, you can't breathe properly. And the best thing you are given to gain your taste buds, sugarcane, it doesn't taste correctly because you are diseased. And we all have that diseased mindset. We think we are good. And you see so much of frustration in high class and high economic class. And there's so much of frustration. There is so much of suicide happening. We just have to come back to that feeling of being humble and take up this process of chanting very seriously, because by uttering the name of the Lord again and again, because the Lord can manifest everywhere. As you heard, Lord manifests as a cloth for Draupadi Maharani. Lord can manifest everywhere. If Lord can manifest as a cloth, why can't Lord manifest as a name or the syllables, which essentially says, please engage me in your devotional service. And once that faith and surrender is there, your chanting is going to improve. And you think this chanting is giving you faith and is keeping you upright in this challenging world. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that example. That's so true.
One more example he was giving, Prabhuji, we see outside dogs, right? But we don't we don't have love with that dog, right? But when we buy a goat and take to our home, right? When we do actual service to that goat, then our love arises to that dog, right? So you are saying that, service is the only thing way, how you can, create your love to that, right? Without service, you cannot, have your love to someone. So you have to do service. Okay. So service, with doing service, automatically the love arises. Okay. So he was giving that example that I like, the outside dog and the dog that you, take to your home and you do service, right? You bath the dog, you take care of the dog, right? You feed the dog everything every day, right? By doing that service, you have, love for that dog, right? Why your love is created? Because you do service to that dog. Okay. So generally, for example, anything, okay, when you do service to that, right, automatically in some course of time, your love will arises. So similarly, if you devotional service to Lord, right, maybe initially you don't like, but if you do gradually the devotional service, right, like the way your desire arises for the dog, right, like the way similarly the love will arise, okay, for the God also, so that you will do more and more devotional service.
Right, right. So I had a friend, I still have him. He's one of my colleagues. His kids have left him, in the sense they have grown up and they are doing their own stuff. He has a dog, okay, as Prabhuji is mentioning, and then he takes care of him. He, gives him vaccines and takes, day-to-day chores, this, that. Once this colleague of mine was suffering from fever, and he had flu and he couldn't get up. And everybody went in their merry way. But this dog, who has been a pet for some time, used to always come and sit outside the door, have an thought process of curiosity, and he sometimes would kind of come and massage this colleague of mine. And for 2-3 days, when this guy couldn't get up, this Prabhu couldn't get up, he would do the reciprocation of that service. And he says, when you fall sick, you realize how valuable this relationships are. If a person loves you, they would have more love for you. And when you do not, and that is a culmination of the service you are doing. So anything you do in that sense, whether you do it to your plants, whether you do it to your grass, whether you do it to your pet, and if that can happen, why not transcend that to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Aham Bija Pradapita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. Everything comes from him. He is the seed-giving father of everyone. And then you will feel that inherent nature of happiness, which is nothing but love, is manifesting. All right, Prabhu, thank you so much. Anything else? Yeah, bit quiet today. So any comments? Anybody else would? I know we have a very, but if you have any thoughts, don't hesitate to share. We have Rohit Prabhu, Anuradha Mataji, Kovil Mataji, Ashish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, thank you for the class and examples. I have a question regarding Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Why in Hinduism we have so many versions? Even if you go to some village, they have we call Kula Devam. So, like, why is there so much disparity in the message across India?
Very nice question. So what happened, Prabhu? Over a period of time, there were different set of leaders, spiritual leaders who have come to various different parts of India. But what has happened is the message of Guru Sadhu Shastra is lost. Say, for example, there are two things. First is God loving and God fearing. Say, for example, because of some activity in the village, they have been following one Deva or Devi in the village. There was a flood, and this person, they prayed, and the flood receded. So there is that sense of gratitude that if they do not pray to that certain goddess because of whom the flood receded, there will be subsequent floods. So there is that element of God-fearingness which has been upbringing in various different. So in India, you'll see before the exams, before going to see a bride or a groom, people would have personal needs, and by not following it, so quite a lot of the gods and goddesses are created by them. Like, say, for example, Bollywood, for example. Bollywood has created some gods and goddesses which have never even be heard of. There's no reference to that in any scripture. So it has been created and has been professed by many different individuals. They may be spiritual leaders, they may be politicians, they may be entertainers. And secondly, it has also been tapped onto the God-fearing attitude people had. And because of that, we have, before even we joining ISKCON, when we are trying to read so many literature, there is bound to confuse everybody. But when Srila Prabhupada very focusedly has got the tenets of these words, that words, and you compare and contrast and so beautifully put it as to, Vishnu has come from Krishna, not the other way. And that really became a lot of clarity. So because the Guru Sadhu Shastra was missing, and secondly, it was the God-fearing attitude which really took them astray, in my answer, Prabhu. Does that help, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Prabhu or Mataji? So it's a discussion forum, and it helps in putting forth some very big doubts we have in mind. So please join every Saturday as much as you can, because by interacting, we can only clear our doubts. Sometimes, believe me, I learn a lot from your questions and your comments and reflections. So please join. Anything else before we close? So let's.
Prabhuji, I have a small question.
Sure.
So we got this 2023 calendar, Prabhuji, right? So I also had the 2021 and 2022 old calendars from the temple. So like because these calendars have all the photos of Krishna and all the gods, right? So what should do, Prabhuji, to the old calendars? Where should we put?
See, typically, had it been India or other places, we would float it in a river. But we should recognize that these are. So this is more of a darshan album, right? So you have the darshan album calendar. So that is supposed to get us closer. But in this situation today, I have, to tell you the truth, Prabhu, I have calendars for the last 25 years, and I have not thrown a single one, because as long as possible, Prabhu, these are the little books which are so powerful. Just having it around gives you that, even if you are not putting it on the wall, it's just few 100 pounds or 200 pounds of weight, which can reside in your bookshelf, because we do not have a true process, as we mentioned, in the, trying to do Visarjan in the village pond or wherever in US. So please see to it that it's around. Don't disfigure it or don't throw it away. And if you, and that's a personal suggestion, and it's good, Prabhu. And sometimes you want to refer to the past calendar and the beautiful darshan pictures. You can always say, see, this is a classic example. You have books in your house, right? I would like to be around books, but I may not read everything. But if I want to refer to any book, I have access to it. So if you have, I'm sure all of us have little space in our house to park that extra calendar and not throw it because we don't have a good process of recycling that. Or you could, if somebody needs some photos, you could frame it in a frame and give them as a gift. There are numerous ways we can do it. I have seen people framing those calendars and giving it as gifts to other neighbors and things like that who are not Krishna consciousness. It's a preaching opportunity. So kindly do not throw it. And if you have to Visarjan it in a river, which is not possible here. Okay, bro?
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, bro. So let's end today's class by offering prayers at the lotus feet of all Vaishnavas by saying Vancha kalpataru vesha kripa
Sindhu Patitanam Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Granthara Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Prema. Hari Hari.
Hari Hari Bol.